Welcome to the Vibrant Life podcast. This is the official podcast of the Vibrant Life community. And I'm Sarah Nolan. I'm a burnout prevention and energy management consultant. And I'm here with Aimee Montgomery. And Aimee is a business and a life coach with her company, A Call to Thrive. And she has several actually amazing stories to share with us today about, overcoming traumas. And she specifically has overcome something called CPTSD, which is, it's where you have a lifetime of traumatic events. Basically, you grow up in a traumatic lifestyle, and she's been able to successfully overcome that, and now she gets to help her clients overcome stress and with their businesses and how all of that relates together, because we all know that your business can often be a trigger for some of the deeper stuff that's going on. So I'm so happy to have you here today with us, Aimee. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing your stories.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So can you tell me how this whole pattern of PTSD and stuff like that happened? How did that start for you in your life?
Yeah, I think that for just like with a lot of people, it was my normal.
Mm-hmm.
And when, you grow up in something, it's your normal because you don't know any different.
Right.
And so I didn't know until probably a little over a year ago that my parents, and including my sister, were suffer from narcissistic personality disorder.
Mm-hmm.
And so basically, because they have to live their life a certain way, and dealing with their that illness, it affects you, especially.
Can you tell us a little bit about what that is, and how would somebody know if they saw that? If somebody maybe had that growing up themselves and they didn't realize it. So what are some of the symptoms and stuff to look for?
So that's a good question, because when I figured this all out, I didn't even know it existed or what it was. You hear that word and that term thrown around a lot, right? And I think sometimes there's a misunderstanding. So there are several different types of narcissism, and it's a spectrum disorder. So some people are a little bit more severe than others, and it comes in different forms. Mm-hmm. So there's generally two ways that it shows up. Either they all have a pathological jealousy, so they can't allow other people to be better than them, that sort of thing. It is really that's one thing they suffer with. And then it's either really focused on appearance, or really focused on that they know more than other people. Some of the things that you can look for, there's actually a list, like in the mental health, if you look it up, there's 10 different traits that you have to portray in order to be considered a narcissist. But you can kind of figure out that this is happening by some of the things that they do. One of the number one things is if you hear someone say, "I never said that," or "that never happened," that is a way for them to get you to question your reality. Mm-hmm. And it allows them to manipulate you. They're usually really, really good at lying. Mm-hmm. And, so good that you believe them. I think I had the wool pulled over my eyes for many years, but they also do things that are called smear campaigns, where they'll go out and tell everyone lies about you, to try and ruin, to make it look like they're the victim and everyone hates you.
And so you grew up with this, like you said, both of your parents had these traits.
Yeah, and it comes from, basically, in a nutshell, if I were to simplify it, from years 1 to 5 when you're young. Mm-hmm. If you don't get emotional love, then you don't develop that emotion.
Right.
of
Yeah.
empathy. And so, my dad grew up in a very abusive home. Parents were alcoholics and they abused him, and he shut down emotionally when he was a kid. So he's never emotionally available at all. And then my mom, she grew up in a kind of just not an emotional family, tons of brothers and sisters. And so they really, it's like something that's passed down. And then my sister ended up with it as well. There's usually one person in the family that begins to question everything. You're the scapegoat, the one that gets blamed. And if you happen to have empathy, which was my case, you're attacked a lot even more. But the negative of that is, you have to go through all this stuff, but in the end, you actually are the one that gets healing in the end. And, you can break that cycle for generations.
Yeah, it seems like the empathy allows you to be a little more conscious, and that consciousness can lead to ultimate freedom. I'm thinking of some specific families that I know who have gone through stuff like this. And it's like there's one sibling who, like you, had some of that empathy and was able to see like past some of the stuff eventually. And they ended up coming out a lot better than the others.
Yeah. And, you end up, because you're able to be introspective and look at yourself and go, why am I like this? Or what's, you start to ask different questions, where if you really have a narcissistic personality disorder, you don't have that ability. Like they don't look at themselves and they might say something like, why am I this way, or that sort of thing, but they're not going to change it. Like the chances of you seeing them going and changing it are, it's few. There might be some that try it, but I haven't heard of anyone, being successful in that area. So, so I think because you're willing to really dive deep and do the work, you're able to get healing.
Yeah. And so for you, Aimee, what do you feel like, because this is, I know, is such a deeply ingrained cycle that can just be passed down through generation to generation. And most people do not successfully overcome this and don't successfully overcome the CPTSD. So what do you feel like is different about what you did and about your, process that helped you to be so successful?
I was pretty lucky in finding a lady who wrote the book, Will I Ever Be Good Enough? And she had almost like 100% recovery rate. She's a doctor, and I really I took her book seriously. And in it, she talks about the dividing factor of whether or not somebody's going to get healed. There's two ways that you cope with narcissistic abuse. Either you become an overachiever, you become the doctor, the lawyer, the super rich person, super success, right? Because you're trying to, at some psychological level, get love that you never got. And, you may not logically think that, but that's what you end up doing. Or you underachieve. You get to the point where there's so much high expectation, you start to underachieve. So you're the one that shows up at the police station. You always have a drama going on, that sort of thing, because you want people to take care of you so that you get the love that you never got, even though that's really neither of them work.
Right.
So, but the step one of it all is, one, taking responsibility and grieving and facing the fact that you did not get what you needed. You did not get loved. And even though you might know that on a certain level, the people that I've seen that choose not, either they're so into the dysfunction of overachieving or underachieving, it's working for them at some level, they don't want to change, or they aren't willing to face the fact and grieve that they did not get loved. They're like, they'll make excuses. Oh, well, my relationship with my parents are great now. Doesn't matter.
Right. Yeah.
You have to truly grieve. So I took that and it was like grieving a death.
Mm-hmm.
And going through that was extremely painful. And, you're purposely going through and facing your stuff. And I think a lot of people are not willing to do that it's the most painful process. And it's really hard for people to understand too, when you are, I went no contact with my family, but I had to get healing. And that's when, for having CPTSD, when the black figures stopped, attacking me at night.
Yeah.
And having flashbacks, and when the flashbacks started to go away. So, it's tough to make a decision to let go of your family. But, I got to a point where my health was at risk, and not just my mental health, but my physical health. And I didn't realize that, my stomach was really messed up. I had systemic candida. I thought that I had taken too many antibiotics, but it turned out I was in a permanent state of fight or flight, and it finally caught up with me. So, it was more, do I want to survive? Do I want to continue to live? Or do I just want to, choose to have my family around? And, I love them, even though they can't love me in the same way. So, it was really, really difficult. So I think that that's the key. The rest of it is really fun, discovering yourself. And, I'm 47 years old, but I've had to, for the first time in my life, figure out what I love and try all kinds of things. And, somebody looking at me from the outside might think, like, she's 47. Like, why is she, learning to salsa? And why is she, why does she have a dollhouse, and
tell us the story about the dollhouse. That was really good.
Yeah. So one of the things that you have to do when you go through and you start to heal yourself, and, how you learn to love yourself, is you have to give yourself what you never got. And that is really getting in tune with the little child in you, and asking, for me, the little girl, and asking her what she never got. So anything that I felt that my parents promised me that I never got, it was up to me to be my own mother and give myself those things. Like, you have to, even as an adult, repair your childhood in the now, even though you feel like you're stupid, like, why am I getting myself a dollhouse? I'm 47 years old. If it's Legos or if it's Star Wars action figures, you got to go do it. And so one of the things my mom had promised me was a dollhouse. And so I went out and I built myself a dollhouse. I put electricity in it. And, I mean, a lot of it's pretty expensive now, but, I'll buy myself little things to put in it. And it's been a healing process. And it's really helped me to, love myself. And I started to paint. And, that's one of the things. My mom is an artist, and she just kind of discouraged me from doing art, that I would never be good enough, and, artists starve and all that. So I started to paint more and have more confidence that I could create art. And somewhere in there, when I was, when I first started doing it, I just thought, I'm wasting time because I'm not working, because I was the workaholic. Trying to get love by achieving, and it never worked. And so here I was painting. Nobody was going to see my art. Like, what am I going to do with it? Put in the closet? That was always my thought. Like, it doesn't produce anything. So, but somewhere in there, a switch went on, and I was proud of myself and gave myself the credit and for what I created. And I started to love myself for the first time. And, previously I would, go to the grocery store and hear love songs over the sound system and get really depressed, and feel empty. And, that's really typical of somebody that suffers from this, where that you don't love yourself, because you do feel empty. And you might go relationship to relationship and always, feel like a high at first and then feel empty. And you either, go relationship to relationship, or you give up. And I think for me, I gave up at a young age, and it's probably the healthiest decision I could have made, because I think I saved myself a lot. I'm now healthy, and I can, have a relationship if I want to, but, I would have been the serial dater. I think, now I see a lot of other people that that, haven't walked through that, where they've given themselves the love that they need. And so they go relationship to relationship feeling empty. And it's like, I so understand what you're walking through, And so it is so important to, do something that nobody else is going to give you credit for. Nobody else is going to see. It's all about what you give yourself, and behind closed doors, what you're doing for yourself. No one's ever going to see my dollhouse. Nobody cares, but it's for myself. And it's so extremely important to do that. And really being mindful of what you need, asking yourself what the little girl in you needs, and giving that to you.
One thing I love about what you're talking about, Aimee, is how much action you're talking about. Like, this is a very active process. A lot of people, when they talk about, healing, especially on an emotional level, it's all about thinking. It's all about like how you're thinking, and you're talking about how you're behaving and changing your behaviors. And I think that's something that a lot of people can really benefit from, is like anchoring all of these changes like into your behavior, into your body, into your action. So thank you for sharing that. What do you feel like was the turning point when you went from kind of being in that the victim state of like not really conscious of what was going on with you and your family, to getting conscious and starting to make some real changes? Was there a specific moment, or was it just kind of over time?
Yeah. So I went through this transition where I was, kind of doing ministry for a number of years. I thought I wanted to be a minister. Mm-hmm. What I wanted was to show people that they were loved, and for obvious reasons, because most of my life I wasn't. And so I kind of realized after, I think, being in ministry myself, that it wasn't, my definition of ministry wasn't the same as everyone else's. Mm-hmm. So I had to get down to, okay, what did I really want? And it was to help people to do the impossible in their lives. I wanted to help them succeed. And so I decided I want to be a coach. And my dad sold Tony Robbins programs since I was 13. And, like most kids, I rebelled against all of it. So I thought. And when I told my dad that I wanted to be a coach, he shipped me absolutely every product that he owned of Tony's. And I started listening to him for the first time. Because, aside from what my dad forced down my throat, but what was crazy is when I started listening to him, it was like, Dad, like he says the exact same things that my dad, like every conversation I ever had with my dad was basically him repeating Tony Robbins.
Right.
So, I started to apply Tony Robbins' Hour of Power every day, where I would do the breathing exercises and I start to dream. That was a huge turning point for me, because when you're experiencing narcissistic abuse and you're kind of being controlled by other people, you don't get to have your own dreams. You don't get to have your own talents. You don't get to have your own preferences. And you don't even get to share your feelings. So I started to do the vision board, and my dad trained me to do vision boards, but it was more like superficial stuff. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so I really started to dream and go after stuff. And so one of the things was I wanted to do YouTube, and I ended up getting by mistake a viral video after that. I wanted to go to a UPW, and that happened. And I always wanted to be a TV host. Mm-hmm. And I started by happenstance. I got a lady, Emmy nominated TV host, to coach me because of a friend. And she's like, "You're a natural. Why aren't you on TV?" I'm like, "Because I don't know how to be." And she's like, "Well, let me help you with that." So I was in LA because she told me to go buy some clothes. And I remember my mom was really attacking me and, freaking out. Like every time I'd go, she's like absolutely freak out and try to kill my dreams about absolutely anything that I was doing or stepping out to do. And first I thought she's really negative. I'm like, why is she so negative? And it was just this consistent thing I was experiencing my whole life. But I had moved out of state, and and one day it was like, I had went and got my first photo shoot in my life. Mm. And, because I started to get more confidence. As I started to step out and go after some of my dreams and have some little bit of success, I actually started to believe that, like, maybe I could do some of these things. And I remember I got my photos taken, and my mom said I looked like a bitch.
Wow.
And that was and we had just had a conversation where she said that she had been Googling my sister, Googling narcissistic abuse, and she was convinced that my sister was a narcissist. And
your mom said that?
Yeah.
And interesting.
Yeah. And I mean, she in fact had told me previously that she called it being emotional. Like, she could not be emotional. She's like, I know it's there, I just can't get it out. I didn't know what she was talking about. She asked about, like, what if she wanted to be emotional? At the time, I didn't have the answer to tell her, like, how you can be healed. But I basically told her that, I went and I Googled the narcissistic abuse because of what she was telling me about my sister. And then it was like, oh, if there's one, there's a whole family of them. And then I was panicking. I'm like, am I a narcissist? Freaking out. And I think everyone kind of goes through that process. But then I found that lady's book. But I think the key was I started to go after I started to go after what I wanted. I think when I was doing ministry stuff, I was still in the zone of, I want to be good enough to be loved.
Yeah. And what a great way to do that with ministry, right?
Yeah, because you're helping people, you're doing charity, it's all about other people, give. And I was in some weird way getting my needs met by being needed. And that's one thing that I was a true empath. I'm not anymore. And I think it's really important that people understand that when you are an empath, it's where you really feel other people's emotions. Like, I could walk down the street and feel what people are feeling, that's sensitive. And you're also you give too much. You just pour into other people. And it's really at a level that you need to be needed. Where a narcissist needs the praise. They need to be, liked and all of that. You need to be needed. And it's not until you learn to love yourself that switches off and you begin to actually be able to produce real boundaries. Because,
right.
I went through all those Riddle's boundary books. I went through, the 12 steps when I was young because, my dad's parents were alcoholics. So, we dealt with some of that passed down. I went through all of that, and I could never do it until I actually learned how to love myself.
Yeah.
So that's truly the answer. If you don't want to be a victim of narcissistic abuse, then learn to love yourself and stand up for yourself. You have to be willing to, whether, like, you're in a job and you work with somebody that's a narcissist, you have to stand up for yourself. They're not going to respect you if you don't. They'll walk all over you. They may not like you because you stand up to them, but that's the only way that you can protect yourself, is learn to love yourself.
Yeah, I love that. What a powerful message. Now, if you were to give somebody, like, 3 things that they can do right now to start to learn to love themselves, because I know I talk to people all the time about this, and it feels so overwhelming because so many people are in that place of, like, self-hatred. Like, I used to be in that place for a very long time. And the gap between self-hatred and self-love is so big. It feels so big. What would you say are at least 1 to 3 things that somebody can start doing right now?
Yeah. So if you find yourself in a situation, maybe you didn't have narcissistic parents, but maybe you didn't get the love you needed growing up. I think a lot of people can identify with that. That would be the first step, is that you have to be your own parent. You have to be, the mother or the father that you did not get. And so a big part of that is mindfulness. And, you can start with just, like I started with just being aware of my physical health. Do I need to go to the doctor? Because I was neglected growing up. So I would neglect myself as an adult. So being mindful of the things that you need and start taking care of yourself, going and doing hobbies, forcing yourself to, especially if you think that it's a waste of time.
Yeah, I love that, especially if you feel like it's a waste of time. Yeah, exactly.
Force yourself to. You're going to be there and you're like, this is a complete waste of time. But what you want to do is figure out what makes you happy. What's the kick off your shoes moment that you get to have every week? Do you go do salsa, or for you, is it a paint class? Like, what is it that, that just makes you laugh and just have a great time? I think so many times we get so into, at least I did, into achieving in life that we forget to enjoy life. And so that's a huge part of it, is doing hobbies. Because if you just go to work and then, work out, that's not a hobby.
Right.
So you have to really cultivate that. That would be number one, because in that process, and things that nobody is going to know that you're doing, things that do not get you attention externally, because you have to learn to give yourself attention. That would be number one. Two, really learning what mindfulness is. There's a book that I have been studying that has really helped my healing, and that is called Who Dies? It's a pretty popular book. It's been around for a really long time. It's easy to find. But it's a guy who studied people that were at the last stages of their life, kind of closing things out, that sort of thing. And what he realized was that people that learn to be present and learn to dive deep into their emotions ended up being the happiest that they ever were. When you start to realize that you are not what you achieve, you're not your emotions, you're not what you feel, and you're not what you think. And emotions are things to explore. So for example, if I'm angry, that's the top level. Or you're depressed, that's the top level. That's not really what you need to deal with. You need to go deeper. Under anger is depression. Okay, so why am I depressed? Maybe I'm depressed because I can't control the world and I can't make it a safe place.
Right.
But once you face that, you process it, you allow yourself to process it, you find peace. And I think a lot of people, they will feel the surface emotions, react to those with drugs, food, TV, video games. That was my thing. I would go and I'd play a lot of video games. I'd check out. I was the one that would just isolate from everyone. I had social anxiety, wouldn't go out and do anything, and play video games on my iPhone. And I find a lot of other people that have dealt with CPTSD do the same. The people that, deal with that, they'll tend to, more and more people will isolate. Healthier people tend to be out in the public. There are a lot of narcissists out in the public, but you have to learn to love yourself so that you can protect yourself. But right. That would be number two, though, is learning to really what mindfulness is. Study mindfulness. You can actually read yourself into healing. You don't have to go to therapy. The more you know and the more you understand, especially if you have CPTSD, there's a book called CPTSD From Striving to Thriving. He also has a big long list of books that you
I love the title of that, From Striving to Thriving.
Yeah. And I went to that website initially a lot in the beginning. Went to the one lady's book step by step, then started reading and I got healing through her book, then started reading his, and he's more the science behind things. And he had a checklist. If you're in a flashback, this is what you need to do. And you can get that for free on his website. But he also kind of shows you the stages of healing, where you're at in healing. And it's really important because a lot of people, even therapists, don't understand what CPTSD is. They're used to dealing with vets that have gone through war and all of that, and not so much CPTSD. So, but again, you don't have to go to a therapist for it. I did do some EMDR. I took a break from it, and I might go back and do some more. But I think that the more you educate yourself on emotions, the more comfortable you are with your own emotions, the more comfortable you are with other people's emotions, the more successful relationships you're going to have. And what's the benefit of going through this is that when you begin to really overanalyze your feelings and emotions, most people don't do that. And what happens is you will become a genius in emotional intelligence, and you experience relationships at a way deeper level than anyone else ever will. So that is one really, really positive thing about walking through this. But mindfulness is definitely would be number 2, and really diving into what that is. And lastly, I would say, again, I think that those are the 2. I don't even know that you need a third.
Yeah, no, yeah.
Because the mindfulness thing also goes into, your physical wellness, because that's a separate thing. Like, I started to do yoga, but not for emotional reasons. Like, that doesn't do anything for you emotionally, but it does amazing things for you physically. Not working out just to look perfect, but making sure that you're doing things that are going to help you feel good.
Right.
So that would be the last thing. But, I even had to discover, like, oh, yoga does nothing for my emotional health. That's just physical, and really identifying those things. But when you're so unaware of your emotions and so out of tune, you may feel miserable, you may feel horrible, you may feel depressed, not know why. I dealt with stress and anxiety my entire life, and I didn't know why. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what the root is. So the more you can do that and really ground yourself, get out into nature, take your shoes off, go to, if you're especially if you're in a state of permanent fight or flight, if you've experienced a lot of verbal abuse in your life, like myself, I had a lot of stomach issues, and it's a slow process of getting yourself through it. You have to take a lot of different vitamins and things, magnesium, vitamin B, all of those good stuff to kind of help regulate your system, and start to get out into nature. Start to go to places that you can take your shoes off and put your feet in the water, put your feet on a rock, put your feet on the grass. It just grounds you and gets you back to what's important in life. So anytime you can get into environment, if all you can do is go out to your front yard and do it, that's fine too. But that will, anytime you can just take a break and get focused. I do Tony Robbins breathing priming that you can find on YouTube, that anyone that's gone to UPW knows about. That has, especially going through healing from CPTSD, helped me survive. And I have a trampoline I jump on in the morning, and being responsible for your emotions.
Yeah.
Because if you wake up and maybe your default is depression and anxiety, you are still responsible to make yourself feel amazing. And so going through that, and I'll be honest, when Tony Robbins would be like, okay, put your hands on your heart and be grateful for something. I was grateful for my plant outside on my deck. I have an orange plant and, orange bush. And that was the only thing I could think of to be grateful for. And sometimes life is like that. Sometimes you don't have like these grandiose things. I was thankful for my parakeets, and I picture when I bought them and brought them home and how cute they are. And, sometimes you just have to, my dad would always say this to me, and Tony says this too: if you want to be happy, what would you be happy about? And I always say, well, but I'm sad.
I say that to my kids too.
Yeah, I'm doing horrible. It's like, no, if you wanted to be happy, what would you be happy about? And I'm really grateful for that, because that's how I try to focus in on life. If I wanted to be happy, what would I be happy about? And really, again, dreaming big and making goals that you think you cannot do and that you're not good enough for, and ask yourself, if you were good enough, what would you do? And I started asking myself that. If I was good enough, what would I do? And it doesn't mean you're going to have talent to do stuff, but you need to try. And as you start to kind of walk through that process and be grateful and believe for those things as if they already exist, even if you don't achieve them, you already have the happiness. So that really helped me even through this whole entire process to create happiness in my life, even though I've been going, through a lot. So.
Yeah. Oh, that's amazing, Aimee. Thank you so much for, there's so much wisdom and gold in this one, like 35-minute conversation. For everybody who is watching and listening, I would encourage you to even go back and listen to this. maybe several times, because what I have found through recovering from trauma is consciousness is one of the biggest keys. And this conversation can be a path to consciousness and to just becoming more aware of, the more you're exposed to what we've been talking about, the more aware you can become and the more conscious you can become, which ultimately leads to more power in your mind, in your spirit. And so thank you so much, Aimee. I really appreciate everything that you shared with us today and sharing your journey and just all of the wisdom and tools, like actual things that people can walk away with and start implementing.
Yeah. And thank you so much for having me on. I'm hoping that it'll help a few people.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I know that it will. And so if people want to reach out to you, what's the best way to get a hold of you? And I know you do some complimentary consultations for people who, might need some extra help with this kind of stuff. So how's the best way for people to reach out to you?
Yeah, if they have questions, I check all of my social media, Facebook or, YouTube, either one of those I'm on. And then again, on my website, if they want to meet with me for free for an hour, they just have to go to my website to my where I have my coaching, and just enter their email, and we'll set up a time for them to meet with me.
Awesome. And it's AimeeMontgomery.com, right?
Yeah, AIMEE Montgomery.com.
Okay, cool. And I actually have a gift that I want to give for anybody who does sign up for you and starts to work with you. I have a complimentary yearly subscription to the Rejuvenation Club, which is monthly meditations and guided processes that will assist the journey with Aimee. And so just let Aimee know in your consultation that you heard about this podcast, and we'll get that membership over to you as well. So I highly encourage, you guys, if you have resonated with what Aimee has said and with her process, then reach out to her. And she's going to be able to help you, with, the stress and everything in your business, and just kind of get things working better and get stuff back on track.
That's awesome. Yay.
Awesome. All right. So thank you so much, Aimee. And thank you everybody who has tuned in today, watching, listening, wherever you're from. Thank you. We really appreciate your time and energy with this process. So thank you so much, and we'll talk to you soon.